Phil. We're, not done yet. Folks, I wanted to open this up this Monday. Happy Monday, everybody. And thank you guys for listening. I've gotten some calls from people watching on Facebook. Make sure you like this video, like the YouTube video, folks. You can donate to $ Ancestry Lands on Cash App or Ancestry Lands on Venmo. I think this is a really great topic. During my travels, when I am out in the world meeting people, a lot of times when I take care of patients, I take care of elderly patients, people who are, all ages, adults, but most of the time I see people towards the latter part of their life. I see people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and I, see some people who are, um, get the news that the final curtain call is coming. One thing that I'm amazed at is the sometimes the polarization, and when I say that I mean the wide range of responses I get about people at that point in their life. There are many people who are at peace with the coming next stage. There are many people who are they're okay with what they call going back home. They're okay with the end, the end of the road. There's no more tomorrow that's going to come. Or if the tomorrows come, they're few and far in between. There are few more sunrises and less sunsets left in their life. And I meet people who live with an immense amount of regret. They live with a lot of difficulty in the life that they've lived. And I think that that's something that most people ignore until they get to that line, that precipice, that point where there is no more not looking at the mirror. There is no more lying you can do to yourself. There's no more tomorrow will be another day. I've got another year. I can do it next time. When that starts to become less and less, you're gonna have to look at life a little differently. And when I say that, I mean I've seen people who have just gotten told the worst news in their life. I actually took care of a patient last night. I take her for the last 2 nights, and she got some of the worst news anyone wants to hear. Um, and her, I can see with her trying to process everything, she's already making plans to check out. Like medically, with doctor care and hospice and things like that. And hospice is like where you're gonna go, you're gonna die, and um, the care is geared towards making you not suffer as you enter in the last stages. And the thing I think people that misunderstand is that this can happen to anyone at any stage. There are babies who have cancer. There's not there's no like you're supposed to not get this stuff or any stage. There are tons of babies who are born with congenital or things that take them out of here. Life is cruel even from the start. Why I say this is that the people listening and watching this video who've managed to stay in because they're looking at everything as we see the bank failures, the economy. I mean, the whole world seems like it's just going upside down and crashing. I ask people to take a step back and look at the I don't need no man. I don't want a woman. I'm gonna be a multimillionaire and I'm gonna be okay because I've got this and I've got that and women are this or men are that. When it all comes down to it, you're gonna be alone, and that's okay to say when you're 20, 30, 40, 50. When you can walk and talk it, it's okay. But I see people who are 80, 70. Yeah, if you take a look at their lives as they get older, they start to not have so many people. When you can't get around as well, when you can't get up as well, when you're not as quick as you used to. Certain things that take a short amount of time, take a long time now. And there's an increasing number of older people who are living alone in their homes, or and there's no one there. No one there to, not their kids. If they have kids, the kids just call and check on them. In this country, more adults tend to live alone instead of living with extended family. I think that number is almost like around 30 to 40%. So when I get older, in about another 40 years, that number probably will be much higher. But when you get down towards the end of the road, the loneliness is not just being alone, like you're single and alone in your 20s. It's not the same way. It's much different. Because one thing you can't do once you get past a certain point is your circle gets smaller. You can't increase your circle. A lot of people either have solidified their support systems with family members, um, other things like that. But again, you just can't go back out there and work. I said this to people in their 60s quite often, is that you should be working until you physically can't work anymore. Because if you start to retire and say 65, 70, and you live for another 30, 40 years, you got to have money for 30, 40 years. And if anything we're seeing with these bank bailouts now, what they're saying it's not a bailout, but it basically is a bailout, and these bank failures, how are you going to support yourself going through these rough times? That's what I don't think anybody else is talking about. We have all the bank runs, we have all the information about that, and but again, the people who lived through the last, not the 2008, but in the 1920s when this really happened, the people lived through that, they're all gone now. Those people can't give us any information of help. We only have stats and history and whatever experts think they know enough to get their head out of their behind to tell you what possibly or can't be true about what to do. But we don't know. And yet you got more single people out here with no resources, no extra help, because we've turned away from each other. It's no more about being in a couple, being together, having relationships. We've now committed to the point of being single. And now we're going through the worst economic time again, with people being not having enough money, things being too expensive. So you don't need a man, but maybe you might want to change that to me. You don't need a man, or I can do bad by myself, or I don't need a woman, but that's so long as you're healthy, right? I mean, in about 30 years, most of us that, probably would have had more people start checking out of the planet, their numbers being called up. And as you get closer to 60, 70, there's not a lot of big groups. Your kids are older, they have kids now, they have their own lives. Who do you run to for comfort? Who do you run to for social network? You can't think that you're going to have the same amount of friends you do as 20, 30, 40 as you do in your 60s, in your 50s. And my whole point is like, when do we kind of think about tomorrow instead of keep thinking that today is always today? When do we start looking ahead at our lives and saying, I kind of see the road changing up ahead, and maybe I need to make some changes. Maybe I need to really get prepared for a time that, you know, I won't have no more of these younger days. Yeah, I think about that constantly. Like, I see myself with a little bit of grays now, but I know this face is going to be full of grays. What is life like for me at that point? And the thing is, you can't start preparing when you're 50. And all the money in the world's not going to help you if you're alone. It's not. I mean, I don't know a lot of older people who are alone that haven't been with somebody for a long time. I'm talking about like they're just single. I'm not getting married. I'm gonna just be a sole lone wolf, or a woman or man that they've had the life that everybody thinks they are. There's no relationships, no bond, nothing. I've seen people who are widowed and have lost somebody they've cared about. And even still, even having a person that you've had been with and walked through this journey, losing them is just there's a loss, there's a loneliness that you have. And what happens is you're left with all the people who really you don't get along with, that are supposedly family, people that's supposed to care about you, but they're doing their own thing, or they become who they're going to become in life. You try to think about going home, things look the same, smell the same, feel the same, but you realize what's changed is you. The world around you's changing constantly. And you realize that now the doors and the window of the time sands closing. It's getting more finite. You don't have tomorrows to think about. And again, even in our 60s, we sometimes still make the same kind of decision with hubris. Like, oh, I'm still what? Yeah, you're making, and that's the problem why I did this. I showed you the stages as a person, the baby, the child, the young man. We're always making decisions on where we are today, never the next day, never tomorrow. And if we do, we don't think beyond the time where we can't walk as well, we can't run as well, we can't get up as well. I mean, you ever had a bladder issue, which you probably haven't, but try having one little bladder problem. One issue when you get older can make your life change to the point where it shifts drastically. Not like my father had a hip replacement surgery, and not everybody recovers well like he does. He's lucky. And some people have, like a dip or a gimp in their walk, and that's permanent for the rest of your life. And my father's just what 60. Father's what, he'll be 64 this year. You don't always have the youth. Youth is the thing about being young is that we fool ourselves with being young. We're never young. We're just always getting older. And conversely, it made me think about the young men that I met that had goals of being a millionaire. One of the men seemed like he's there's no place for a woman who doesn't fit a criteria, and he was not willing to make any concessions. That's what I was talking about, room in your universe. And that's cool now when you're 30, 32. And I mean, I was 32 and I thought the same way, but at 42, life's a little different. Life changes a little bit. You have children, you start to look and see beyond your own lifespan. You see a future beyond your own living and existence. And all I have to say is that getting older, you got to be able to have something that you not only leave behind, but if you're a millionaire just for yourself, like when you're older, what's the value of life going to be for you? Okay, you got a house, cool. You got a house, but you're just in it. You fall down and slip, who's going to get you? Who's going to pick you up? Like I've taken care of patients like this, and in their confusion, they live in memories of the past, ghosts of the past, animals that they had that have died years and years ago. They're living off shadows of a former life that they lived, and no one talks about that. No one tells you about. It's not the nursing home; it's the custodial care that you go into when your kids live in different states and you're in the hospital. Nobody's coming there to be at your side. It's not like you see in the movies. It's not just son or your daughter rushing there to get to you. They're living their own lives. They got work to do. They got to think about the bank failing for them. And what happens is you become. We'll get to it. She's okay because she's in the hospital. The same children that you took care of, and if they coughed in the middle of the night, you were there. You watched. You worried. You stayed out with them when the baby was crying. Yeah, those same kids. You're okay at the hospital. Nobody comes. And no one tells you about that. They don't tell you about that in the Manosphere videos. They don't tell you about that when the girls are talking about my neck, my back. They don't tell you about any of that stuff when you're young and you got all the time to think about it. They don't tell you about any of that. It's cool for a man to be, you got millions of dollars and you'll have a house and you'll have all these things. Well, things get old as you get older. Things aren't the same appreciation as they are when you're older. They're not. I would ask the young men who are yet single and 30, how long until that gets old? How long till you yearn for a woman as a companion? And the answer is always, well, I think I could just get one. And there's never a ponderance upon putting yourself in that time period. Like I said, just you got to be able to just think beyond yourself. And I don't think people can do it. They plug in and they say play. They plug in the thought and they play it. There's never a thought of, I can see a business failing. I can see, conceptualize that. I can conceptualize losing money in real estate. I can conceptualize being divorced. I can conceptualize paying child support. But again, I can't conceptualize being 70, having a bad ankle, and having a walker. Not a cane, a walker, a real walker. Trying to get groceries that I've got trouble trying to put in the car right now at 40. Like, you got two good ankles struggling to get that in there. How do you push a cart when you have a walker? Then you got to pay for help. And it's not the fact that you can't financially take care of it, but it's just, how are you going to be happy when you're less capable than when you made choices in your life when you were capable? And then when you walk past people who are couples that are having fights, that are arguing, do you not think you'll appreciate that a little bit more? That might not be so bad at that point. I'm not saying that don't prepare, don't think you can't get things taken away, but you ask a lot of people who are 80, who are at the very end of their life, not a person that's 60 who still got some fight in them. Ask them what their life is like then. Yeah, I got a grandmother that's still alive, man. She's got very few people that she knows, even siblings. Actually, her twin passed a few years ago. She don't have too many people that she knows from her lifetime anymore. The older you get, the less you will know people from your actual lifetime. Think about that. Think about all the people you know now. Think about all your friends. The longer you live, the less of the people that you'll be able to look up that exist on this planet that would have lived in your lifetime. We don't think about that. There's no thought to tomorrow, the real tomorrow. And at that point, you can't get back all the business trips, all the $1 million, all the houses, the cars, the box, the numbers, the lays, the men, the jewelry, the nails, the rings. None of that shit matters, man. It doesn't. It won't. I'm telling you, I'm the nurse that takes care of the patients that are wrinkled, old, and gray, and the end of life doesn't look all good like they say it to. And most of the reason is because they don't see it. They're talking concepts about life right now, life 20, and everything is within 2 decades of where they can reach and grasp. And then it comes to a point where something's going to happen. You're going to get something that's chronic, meaning that whatever illness you get, you're going to have that. That's going to be a monkey in your back until the day you die. People don't think about that, man. They don't think about that at all. They don't. They think about getting older. They don't think about being old. And they say, "Oh, I'll just have a nurse, whatever else, take care of me." Yeah, but you gotta have the logistics to work out like that. And more than likely, you'll be sitting in the bed, can't turn over with wounds in there, miserable. Yeah, just like that. Rarely anybody to come see you. Maybe a son or a daughter comes in once in a while. But remember, you worked a lot. You worked all the time, right? You worked 80 hours a week, so you weren't really there. But now you need them to be there because you were chasing the $1 million dream. Now at the end, I don't think that matters anymore. You're gonna wish you had moments with your kids. You're gonna wish you had moments to talk to them a little bit longer. You're gonna wish that you had time to sit up and stay with them and talk to your grandkids. All the little micro moments that you missed that you didn't have time for because something was more important. Now that all starts to come back. And it's, could you go back and tell yourself, get your head out of your ass and get back into reality? This is for men and women because we never think it's coming. One of the things that I have fortunate, the unfortunate, fortune of is taking care of people in their older age. And I'm not talking about like nursing home because that's a little different. I'm talking about like hospital because you see it come in like when they get sick and when you get sick, I'm gonna let you know a little secret about life. When you get sick at a certain point, you're not gonna be 100% afterwards. Like you get sick from a flu or a cold. After like this one time when you get older, like you don't recover from that. You're like 80%. And then it keeps on trickling down, down, down. You get less strong as you get older when you get sick after that. And I see how many families come in to visit people, and they say, "Oh, I'll just have a nurse, whatever else, take care of me." Yeah, but you got to have the logistics to work out like that. There's no thought to tomorrow, the real tomorrow. And at that point, you can't get back all the business trips, all the houses, the cars, the men, the jewelry, the nails, the rings. None of that shit matters, man. It doesn't. and it's never a lot. It's rare that I see a buckload of family coming in to visit somebody who's sick in the hospital. And this is pre pandemic. It's always been that way. I've seen husbands in their 50s have strokes and wives come in there looking like she about to go to the club, be in there with her for a few hours, and then walk right out smelling like cherry blossom. Had me looking for a minute like, hello, how are you? And that man's outlived his usefulness. But then I've seen his daughter come in and be the woman that his wife was supposed to be, which is just there by his side. And that gave me hope. I don't think he cared that much that she was gone. I think he was glad that his daughter was with him or somebody was with him. And you can always say, well, a woman and this, and that. And I remember this nurse that I was talking to, this bright young fella, man. And I asked him, he said, he's worried about later on something happening to him. Like he gets injured or something like that, can't work, can't produce anymore, can't be a high value man. And what he said to me was that he's worried that a woman would leave him at that point. If he did 30 years with her. I told him, I said, man, the likelihood of a woman being with you for 30 years or something like that happening is statistically low. She's probably going to ride that out with you, man. She's probably going to be there for you. He said, but yeah, the possibility of her doing that. And I asked him, I said, well, all right, man, if she left you in 30 years, what would be the difference? He was like, I'd rather just be alone. And I said, well, what would be the difference if she left you and because you got sick and you couldn't work anymore after 30 years of being with her? What would be the difference of her leaving then or you never meeting a woman and being alone and the same thing happening? He says, I would just feel better off not knowing that she wouldn't leave. And I said, man, that's crazy. I said, because how'd you get to the hospital? Who called? You had a stroke, you're not calling. Even if she left after that, like, who called the hospital? Who called the ambulance? Who called 911 when he had a stroke in this situation? And I could see his mind just can't process that. And that was something I looked at and said, man, you rather go through it the hard way than at least have the possibility of someone being there. And I see that that's something with the sometimes the talking points that you hear about go your own way, high value man. You work so hard to get all this money, but man, yeah, I'm gonna let you know something about kids, man. They don't care about all of that. They don't. Kids are the most happiest, and they don't need a lot to make them happy. They don't. And the key is with kids, what the one thing that makes them the happiest is when you're there. It's not with the money. That's your wants. That's your priority. But when you have children, man, they just want you there to spend time with you, to talk with you, to play with you. That's it. And the more you don't make time for that, the more you push them further and further away from you. It ain't going to the store and buying stuff. It's just being there with them, man. 80% of it is just being there with them. And I showed those stages because that's you and that's also your children. And each stage that you go through is a short stage. So if you saw the thumbnail and you saw the baby, the little boy, each stage is a short amount of time and it passes so quickly. And the whole point is that you're in those stages at some point. You got a child in that stage at some point. And the thing is when they're going to jump out of that stage before you know it. What was your life like during that stage for yourself and for others? Because at the end, we're all going to be sitting there staring out that lake. You know what's on the other side? That's the other side. And everybody goes. Everybody gets a ferried over to the other side of that river. And you can't come back. Only one has. So again, I ask people all the time, think about that because no one gives credence to the last two stages. When you're all gray, everybody's out there trying to show off at the beach and things like that. But what about when you have to get in the hospital? The hospital's coming, man. You, I'm always who they see at some point. I tend to always see the people who live good, bad, regret, who are ready to go make peace. And I mean, think about it, man. What if you get told that you only got a couple months to live? What if you get told that you got a year to live, man? How do you live your life? How do you take that news? Because I mean, a person who's been here 80 years and a person who heard that at just 25, you still got to come to grips at the end that the end is coming. And most people don't want to talk about that. Because why? We always want to hold on to tomorrow's just going to come. It's just going to be here. Despite us seeing every evidence in life that it's not always promised. And at each stage, you can't just think that every stage is going to stay that way. I mean, I thought that way too, but I knew I wanted to be married. I knew I wanted to have a family. I knew I wanted to have kids. It wasn't a, well, if I find the right one. Being wanting to be married, wanting to have children was not conditioned upon meeting a person. It was something I knew I wanted within myself. And I hear men talking like that. Well, males, not men, because they're when you as a man decide that things are based upon a condition, that's where I think you're not acting like a man. A man has his desires and he looks to achieve his desires. He's not a person that is met upon conditions. That's not how men operate. I don't go, I'm gonna get out of the land business if I don't have this happen. I'm gonna stay in it and duke it out, or I'm gonna make the decision to leave. But it's decision that's being made. You can't be claiming to be alpha in one area, and alpha is just an alpha. That's it. An alpha's an alpha till an alpha is not an alpha. And whatever he does it in an alpha way. If you're a leader, then you're leading. There's no there's no other way. That's it. But again, tomorrow's gonna come. And what I mean is that tomorrow's gonna come whether it's the last or just another day. But you don't know. And it saddens me because I see people who I wish I could share their experiences a little bit more in depth, but I can't because there are certain, privacy protections that I can't go into depth with. But I see a lot of people that there's no one there, man. There's no one there at the end. There's no one there when you've got 5 years and that's the end, the last five. There's no one there, man. Your kids ain't there. Your family's not there. You're just in the hospital staying there until they can get you to a place that can take care of you. And the true matter is, you can tell this will happen, is that if you get old enough or sick enough where you can't be cared by a lay person, like think of all the people you have in your household, friends, family. How well can they take care of someone who has, I don't know, not a major illness, but let's say you just got a problem getting up and getting around? Who do you think will take care of you? And are they the same age as you? Because they might be getting older too. So how they gonna lift you up, right? You ain't thinking about that, is you? You're not thinking about that. And again, yeah, you could stay with somebody, but are you gonna like that living arrangement? You're gonna like the way they living because again, you're in now their place, so you're kind of in their environment. So it's not like you can say, "Well, I'm just gonna stay at home," and everybody's like, "Well, I'll stay in my own house." Sometimes you can't. I'm gonna let you know a little secret about in the hospital. If you cannot take care of yourself, and a doctor says that you can't take care of yourself, guess where you're not going? Take a guess. Home. Think about it. You don't know how much you don't have control until a doctor says it's medically necessary for you not to go home. And then you got to go to a skilled nursing facility or a nursing home for layman's people. Yeah, you don't get to make that decision anymore. Or if they look to your family and say, hey, daughter, son, can you go take care of your dad? Can you take care of your mom? And they say, well, we don't have the finances or the resources to do this because it damn sure ain't free. It ain't going to be free. And they're looking like, mom's not getting up the same way she used to. She wears a diaper or she pees or leaks on herself. We got to change her all the time. Her bladder's not the same, or she's got to have something called a catheter in her, her pee pee hole where she pees out of. There's a tube that goes up in there. I don't know. Or she just smells old. Or she's starting to get a little confused. She forgets where she's at a little too much. You know? I'm in there getting the box cleaned out by my husband, and I got my legs wide open. And here comes my mom coming in there thinking I'm 5 years old getting ready for school because she's confused with the oxygen's off. And next thing you know, I got to tell her to get out the room. And she don't know what's going on. Or she left the oven on and she went to the bathroom. And now I've got a fire in here. Just that little bit will make a person rethink your situation. It doesn't require much. They love you, but reality is a little different when you're not in this field. Medical. You're not taking used to taking care of people. Even seeing your mom that old can sometimes terrify people. Strongest dudes in the world. Kick everybody's ass. See his mom up in there weak and sick, cry like a baby. Can't even stay in the room long enough, let alone help his own mother. Happens, man. Some people ain't built like that, man. And some people are. It doesn't make them good, less than or not. But again, you got to remember, man, you're one illness away from that nursing home, whether you like it or not. And again, you don't even have to make that decision. Your family can say adamantly they'll take care of you. But if a doctor feels like you need too many medical things, it's not your decision anymore. And they'll have the whole state behind them to back that up. Now you go into a nursing home. How's $1 million being spilt now? Oh, it ain't gonna be me. Yeah, I got it till it is. And again, when you look back on your life, what are you gonna remember? Don't forget, when you start getting older, this don't work the same. It's a muscle too, an organ just like the rest of them. It don't always remember every girl. It don't remember even some bank accounts or passwords. It's not always that way, but we act like it is. You gonna remember every girl you bagged, every number you got, every experience. You think that's gonna be what you remember? Got another thing coming. And there are nurses who take care of patients like this all the time, and still they have the same ignorance. You rarely hear nurses talk the way I do. Rarely, and they talk about them like they don't see themselves be coming up to that part. And most nurses will joke that they're going to be worse patients than the patients they take care of. That's the funny part. But again, you got to think about that, man. You should be asking your younger children that are young adults. You should be having this conversation with your parents if they have enough sense to be able to have a conversation about this. And a lot of times, as older parents, if you have younger children, you should probably be really talking with some like an earnest conversation with some reality based. It's crazy because even like I'll give you an example. I was talking to my father and stuff, and he was like, "Well, something happens to him," and I was like, "Well, why don't you just come and stay with me then, if that's the case?" And it was like he was still thinking like he is now. Like I'm just gonna be all right and stay. I'm like, there's certain situations where they won't let you stay in there. You'll have to go in a nursing home. It's not your choice, man. And people don't know this. A doctor can say, "Yo, you cannot go." If they were to say, "Mr. Davis, me," they're calling me. We need your father to go to a nursing home. If my dad doesn't make me the person that's an authority there to fight on his behalf, the doctors can say he's got to a nursing home and that's it. Just for rehab, just to get his body together. You can't go home. And I've seen people. I don't want to. They like. What's my name? My man's name. The big dude from Green Mile. Um, I forget the guy's name, but I think it's like Michael Duncan Clark. There you go. God rest his soul. Michael Duncan Clark in the Island with Ewan McGregor. And he's like, I want to go to the island and everything else like that. That's how they are. I want to go home. I want to go home. Can't go home. Live alone. Your wife's gone. Children ain't coming. Grandkids ain't coming. Oh, well, I'm going to have a lot of money and whatever else. Okay, so let's talk about this one then. So what ends up happening is they can put you in something called custodial care, which means like you're kind of in the state. They're going to take care of you. And pretty much they can wipe your funds out there. Like, whoa, they don't have that. Think again. Think again. I always tell my parents, like, you just need one spouse to say, eh, but we're a priority. When they say it's you or your kids or your family now, your son or daughter might think something different. It may not be that easy of a choice. It might be a clear choice at that point. When they're like, I can either take care of mom or I can take care of my actual family. I'm talking about when an ultimatum's reached. Think it doesn't happen, think again. I've seen it numerous times over the last 20 years. Oh, yeah, and in 2 more months, I would have been a nurse 20 years. So I got 2 decades of seeing this happen where I've looked at women and men alike and been like, man, yo, people are just sons, daughters, grandchildren. Like people are bad people, man. Like on the inside. When it comes down to it, like they look out for themselves, man. Like when it comes up to you and your health, I've seen more people look to themselves and what they can get out of it rather than thinking about doing the right thing. And you would say, well, how would I know? Because you be dealing with a person that does the right thing. That's why you would this would be a person who practices doing the right thing, even when it's not required. But they've been doing it in their lives. They're not doing it. Um, excuse me. They're not doing it to win something. Excuse me. They're doing it because they just do the right thing. Again, and people don't think about that, man. It just takes one real serious hospital trip where you there and you stay a little longer and you realize, oh yeah, and don't have a job and stay in the hospital for 2 weeks. See if you got that job after that. Like to need a month to recover. See if you can get that PTO. Yeah, you might get put on leave, but or maybe not. Who calls your job and lets them know you're sick? Like I said, I think it's just something that people don't think about. People need to consider. And I'm not here to scare people, but it's like, I've had some real impactful days meeting patients at the end of their lives, and the things that they confess that matter or didn't matter, but they've all been like us when we were younger. They thought they knew it all. They thought they had it all. They thought they had it covered. Some of them didn't think drinking was a bad thing. Some of them didn't think smoking was a bad thing. They just kept on. And then life catches up and it keeps on catching. You got to wonder if you're going to answer the door and is it going to be a smile or it's going to be a frown at the face. And again, a lot of people live a little bit longer. It's not just things get bad and then the lights go out. It's kind of like things get bad and you live long enough to kind of suffer a little bit being old. Everybody's like, well, I want to die. It ain't like that, man. I'm going to let you know something about it. It's never what it's like. It's never what you think it's like. It's always something different. And you don't you everybody goes to the extremes. Like I'll talk to my parents sometimes, man, and they give me the most extreme situations of what it can be like. And I'm like, how about you just have like a shoulder that doesn't work the same? Like your rotator cuff tears and it never heals right. Like you're that old. Like let's just start there. Like I could name 4 situations where your life would change and you don't need to die. It could just be super difficult. Like you have problems swallowing. Like you have what we call dysphagia, which is like you have a really hard time swallowing because your throat is like somewhat paralyzed. Now I know, please, all you young cats be like, oh, I don't see that's a problem, and I hear you, it's not. But at this stage, this age, I'm not sure you want to go for that. All right. Y'all some nasty dudes in there in the chat, man. Seriously. Any which way, but what about something like that? How do you deal with that at 70? You got a torn rotator cuff that won't heal, right? Like, how would you manage that situation in your life at 70 years old? That means grocery shopping, carrying, just picking a 2 pound box of elbow noodles off of the top shelf might actually cause you some pain. Cold weather, definitely an issue. Or like having neuropathic pain as a diabetic, meaning like your feet are numb. I've seen people who have cats get scratched up by their cats and have something called cellulitis where the legs are all swollen up. Need antibiotics for that. You want it in the hospital, baby. Don't worry about it. Yeah. or you have to have a surgery because they got to cut out a bad part of your body and the wound just doesn't heal. I mean, these things can put you down for a while, and you don't necessarily need to be out of here completely. And no one thinks about that. There's no preparation for that. And if you think $1 million is going to save you from a couple medical bills, you got another thing coming. Because at that stage, it just starts and it keeps on going. I'm going to use retention and retirement. You need support systems when you get older, man. None of that stuff works, but people make decisions tomorrow based upon today. They never think about, man, I'm going to be older and life may not be how I envision it now. I always tell people, like, what you should do to think about old age is like take an arm and a leg away. And that's how you should plan your life being older. And people won't do it. People probably not going to watch this video because who wants to think about that until you have to think about that? And again, all the preparation I could tell people to do, you got to think about it and look at each of those stages. The young guy, look how much life is there. And you can see life slowly starting to just fade out of that person. That's why I made the bald guy the last stage the most muscular, because that's the last you'll see him that way. And then after that, his shoulders are rounded over. He's slunched over. He doesn't look like anything like the other stages. And that's the thing. You don't think about that. You don't ever consider that life's going to be that way. And you need support systems, man. You need people who can look out for you. And I'm not talking about a mindset group. I'm talking about people who really care for you, man. And it does start with somehow. Sometimes it's children, man. Because you could end up in the same spot with having a faithful wife. You can get the perfect woman or man, and you could still end up in the same spot with a widowed and alone, man. It happens to people. I'm staying with someone right now who's widowed. You don't have to have every sad story. You could just live longer than a whole lot of people. Who's your support systems, man? Who do you have in your life? People move, people go in different places in their life, man. You gotta have a network of people, like real people that you bond with, that you see day to day, neighbors that you talk to. You really need support systems, but they're not gonna start when you're 60 because nobody's gonna come over and check on you at that age. Something to think about. And no one talks about when the curtain is about to fall. No one tells you about the end in life. I had a friend of mine, Avon. You guys heard Avon Coburn, and he asked me about, man, how'd you come up with the middle of life, middle of marriage? And I'm thinking about those things because this is what I go through in my life right now. I'm talking about the things I'm living. It's not how I came up with it. I'm living it. I'm talking to people who are 80. I met somebody who was the third female owner of a hardware store in this country in history, United States history. Single mother too. She's got kids, grandkids running the hardware stores, and she's thinking about her life and looking back at it. And I was amazed to see how far she's come. 80 years old. You don't hear about her in all these books. She's not Ellen Ripley. She's not who Jennifer Lawrence is talking about women not having roles in Hollywood, even though they have. I mean, they're complaining about that. Here's a woman who did it as a single mom, 80 years old, and owns the store. They're not franchises either. I asked her. Still working too in the store. Loves what she does. But she's got family around. She's got a business, a legacy to continue. That's why I keep talking about own businesses, man. Because again, that'll keep you living much longer than just having millions of dollars, having it set, and thinking you're on vacation anywhere, man. That's what people tell you, man. Just tell me this. What animal is retired and living a good life in older age, other than humans, and like we like to think? What animal gets old and has a more vibrant life than they did any other time when they were younger? I'll wait. Then it just shows you that we get sold fantasies all this time on this planet. And again, when you retire, there are people retiring right now in this world we live in right now. You tell me how good of a life you're going to have when inflation is almost at realistically 15 to 20%. I know they're saying it's 5, 6, 7%, but you know they lying. Like you're living in this time where $1 million ain't what $1 million is. And in 10 years, it damn sure ain't gonna be $1 million. What $1 million is today, it's gonna be worse. I mean, where you're living the same thing that happened 100 years ago. Literally 100 years ago. We're escaping reality every chance we get. And reality keeps turning up on us because we won't face it. To all the people who might be watching this that are at that stage of life, and I mean, literally, I had somebody crying. I was holding her hand, trying to tell her, just take a deep breath. I told her, I can't understand what you're going through, having the worst news of your life, knowing that your days actually are numbered. I can't begin to tell you I understand. But I told her, I said, let everybody else in your family catch up because right now you're running towards the cliff trying to get ready to jump off and no one knows you've already started running. Give them a chance to catch up so they understand where you're heading and you can go with everybody else knowing. And that's just because she got the worst news. She's not wanting to face, she just wants to rush through it so she don't have to see it for what it is. And I get it, man. I get it. I do. I get it. I get her pain, what she felt in her eyes, her mind racing, trying to grasp on to whatever she can. It's a terrifying thing to see because I know that could be me. My mother-in-law, Mickey, shout out to you, Mickey. She always told me, she said, I don't think anybody is better than the next person. And I remember like when I first met her, she said that to me, drove me up a damn wall. Because I was like, well, I'm 5'9", man. I've met people taller than me and faster than me, have hair, I mean, like there's so many other, being in sports, very quickly someone's better than you. Like it's not even a guess. And I'm like, that's not true. And then I thought about it as I got older, like now, and I told her just a couple months ago, I said, I think you're right in part, but I don't think you said it fully. Yeah, you're not better than someone else in the sense that you can't get the same results they got, despite you taking different roads in life. Let me repeat that again to people who don't hear it. No one's different in the sense that you can't end up at the same point they do in life, despite you taking a different road in life. You understand what that means? That means that you could be walking past a homeless person who blew it all on gambling, money, sex, drugs, and women. And you can end up homeless right next to that person and you didn't do any of that stuff. It just takes a few things to move left and a few things to move right, and then you're right in their spot. Just two more turns, and you could be sitting right next to them. Just think about that. I mean, I'm giving you some deep, profound stuff, man. This ain't no, it's not all that light stuff that people talk about. It's something to really think about. Is that you should never underestimate the fact that you can end up where other people are in life, good or bad. You can. Remember this, you can be mad as a mad dog at the way things went. You could swear, curse to the fates. But when it comes to the end, you just have to let go. That's On the Road with Uncle Phil right now. You're still live with me, baby. I'm trying to give you guys this knowledge, these insights. Take care of each other. Like, share, subscribe, donate if you can, man. Appreciate you all for watching. Take care and have a good day.